Okay. Question number 2 then is, how have the lives of women and men changed in the last 50 years? And the first thing that we'll hit on is the idea of employment and education. While women's employment is still lower than men's, the two sexes have converged substantially. This is a chart from your book that compares the percent of men and women employed from 1962 to 2010. As of 2010, there are still fewer women in the workforce, but those two populations are rapidly converging. Some of the trends that we've seen is, as wages increased in the 60s and 70s, so did the incentive for women or couples to decide in favor of women working for pay. Back, in the olden days, women didn't make much. It didn't make a whole lot of sense. But as the economy started to shift and women were paid more, it made more sense for women to go out to work, because a two-parent dual earner family can earn a lot more money than they once did. The other major shift here is that the economy changed to include a higher share of jobs in service work, helping other people, which has always employed a lot of women to begin with. So as the economy shifts, it became more conducive for women to work. And we'll talk about that specific thing a lot more in later chapters. Okay. Since 1973, however, men's wages have not increased if we adjust for changes in the cost of living. In fact, the wages of men with only a high school diploma have really decreased, further encouraging the employment of women. So as men make less money, it makes sense, almost out of necessity, especially in dual earner families, to have the woman working too. And of course, another major shift has been brought about because of the feminist movement, which has encouraged laws against sex discrimination that make it more possible for well-educated women to achieve high-level careers. So as we've talked about before, if I, as an employer, say to you, I don't hire women, I don't promote women, and so I'm not hiring you because you're a woman, or I don't hire men, I don't promote men, and I'm not hiring or promoting you because you're a man, I can't legally do that. That is illegal discrimination because gender is a protected class. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen anymore. It's just that they have to be a little bit more subtle about it and make it for some other reason than simply because you're a man or a woman.
Question on that.
Yep.
A friend of mine here a while back, I'm not going to say which nursing home it was, but it was a male, and he applied for a nursing home position as a CNA, and he actually did not get it, and they said it was because he was a man. Now, I don't know all the details on that, but when I talked to somebody who worked at that same nursing home, they said that they only hired so many women and so many men because of the the type of
There might be actually be ratio things there. Emily, you would know more about that than me. Like in the regulations of how you staff.
It sounds like Hillcrest because they have men take care of men, women take care of women. And so if they've already got 6 guys, as they're not seeing us take care of the men's ward, they wouldn't need another guy because men are allowed to take care of women over there.
And specifically in that case, that would.
So that wouldn't be discrimination.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just, well, he felt like he was being discriminated against, so I wanted
That's
to
just the way
see.
that interaction is over there.
That's what I was thinking, but.
If I'm not mistaken, doesn't Hillcrest also have sort of a religious administration, and then also
Like
there are
for women.
exceptions. There are exceptions for that
Yeah, I
sort of
kind
stuff
of
too.
figured that's how it was, and it was Hillcrest. And
I mean, well, or.
yeah, I think that's how it was, because he felt like he was being discriminated against because he was a man. He said, oh, all I hire is women over there, and I was like, no, I don't think that's how it was at all, but since we're talking.
That's one of the things that people like about it is because some of the little ladies don't want the guy taking care of them.
Right. And in some cases like that, there are actual real reasons for it, which falls under the heading of what other concept we learned about last chapter, pop quiz. What's that called? Where we're not intentionally discriminating against you because you're a man and we hate men. It's just a setup of the situation. There's a term for it. Huh? You're somewhat close.
It's not social contracts.
Nope.
Employment contracts.
Institutionalized discrimination. The byproduct is it discriminates, but its policy is there for a good real-world reason.
I have a quick question.
Yep.
This says that men's wages have not increased since 73. Men still make more than women do in the exact same positions, correct? Is the only reason that makes sense because women start out making so much less than men to begin with?
Yep. And largely when we're talking about the stagnation of men's wages, they're largely looking at the high school level of education too. That's where a lot of wage stagnation is happening. And as we, if you remember, kind of mentioned back in the inequality chapters, wages in general for everyone except the top CEO high earners have stagnated since the 70s, especially if we're figuring in cost of living improvements. We don't changes for cost of living and inflation. We haven't seen a widespread raise in wages in years. All right. So how have women's jobs changed? And that pesky pay gap that we always hear about, that women make less than men, does it still exist? And that kind of stuff. There is a thing called occupational sex segregation, and it is represented by an index that ranges from 1 for complete segregation to 0 for complete integration. So if a particular job has a 1, that means only men do this job or only women do this job, and no one really ever crosses these lines. Or if men and women are working this job, they're doing it in separate situations and separate conditions. If a particular job has a 0, that means it's fully integrated and the same number of men and women work that job. When we use these measures, we see that occupational sex segregation declined substantially in the 70s and 80s, but has declined more slowly since then. And jobs do remain quite sex segregated today. There is still a conception that some things are men's jobs and some things are women's jobs. Possible explanations include that socialization still encourages young men and women to aspire to different jobs. It's kind of become an almost hackneyed joke at this point that if you're a woman, what fields are you kind of actively discouraged from participating
Some factory work,
Sawmill.
yeah, sawmill, construction, what else?
Sperm donation.
in? Oh yeah. Even beyond that stuff, I'm talking about like even in like as majors in college. No, not really.
Again, still you're not really expected to go into things like automotive, construction areas. You see some women in electrical, but not very many. I mean, still goes back to the more physical jobs training that colleges do.
Even beyond that.
Like principal. Oh, well,
Education.
You're on the right track, actually.
What she said.
Well, she said astronaut. What's the general heading that might fall under?
Science.
STEM jobs, science, technology, engineering, and math. Women are horribly underrepresented in these areas. It's still kind of seen as a male activity, a male's job, and a guy's world. In fact, it was a couple seasons ago, The Big Bang Theory, if any of you watched that, had a whole thing where the guys spent a day going to high schools trying to encourage more women to come into STEM careers. It did not work out well for them at all because they apparently, again, kept the trope of it's such a boys' world they have no idea how to talk to women because, oh my God, I'm a geek and there's a girl, what do I do? But yeah, that's kind of the idea. Women are horribly underrepresented in STEM fields. Hiring discrimination is another factor because maybe some people just don't hire women for certain jobs. Here is another example where I'm going to completely date myself because I've been trying to use this show as an example for the past 3 years and no one knows what the hell I'm talking about. So I finally found the clip. This is a sitcom. It is a comedy from the 90s, but it does illustrate to a certain extent what women might face if they go into a work environment that is predominantly male. They do play it for jokes because it is a comedy, but this is from Grace Under Fire.
Hey, sweet pea, you know the only reason you got this job is because you're a chick, and the company caved into chick pressure.
Au contraire, Archimedes. The only reason I got this job is because I promised to have sex with smart guys. Too bad for you. I guess you and I are the quota babes.
Well, I think it's long overdue. Why should we have to settle for low-paying clerical jobs just because we have undescended sexual organs? I'm here to prove that women are just as good as men.
I'm here for the dental coverage.
Let's listen up. Before we start work this morning, management's asked me to initiate a program to create better working conditions between our male and female employees. Right. It's called gender sensitivity training.
Hey, I got the gender right here. How'd you like the training?
Carl, that's what you call your unwanted sexual harassment.
What kind of harassment can we do? Hey, my brother's been on a waiting list for 3 years to work here. So how come these two skirts get jobs right off the bat, huh?
Because it's the view of this company that the workforce should reflect the diversity demographic composition of society as a whole. Don't even think about it, Dougie. Female employees are not to be addressed in any derogatory or demeaning words. This includes skirts, chicks, broads, babes, etc., etc.
Hey, I've been working here 6 years and nobody ever got sensitive about what they called me.
That's because you're a big flaming pie hole, Carl. How would you like to be addressed?
Well, my name's Wanda Honeycutt, so Ms. Honeycutt would be fine, and once we're all on a first-name basis, Wanda would be okay as well.
All right. And how about you?
Oh, I don't know. How about throbbing mattress kitten?
You know, if you allow yourself to be addressed in that manner, you're demeaning all women.
Honey, shut up.
You're not helping me here.
Look, my name's Grace. I don't care what you call me. I don't want special treatment. You guys treat me with respect. I'll treat you with respect. And if at the end of the day we all wind up in the shower together, then God love us.
Which one of you girls is Grace, Kelly?
It's women, not girls. Women, women, women.
I'm 35 years old. I've got 3 kids. I can hide a can of cat food under each breast. Thinks I look like a girl. It makes me happy.
Well, you got a call. Your son got in a fight at school and wants you to come down there right away.
Oh, man. Look, but it'd be all right if I took a short break.
You haven't started yet.
I know, I'll make it up. It's just my son's in trouble.
I'm sorry. If you go, I'll have to get someone else.
Oh, please don't. I need the job.
Come on, Bill, cut us some slack. She's a mother.
What's your sensitivity?
You let Phil off when his wife died.
It's because Bill shot her.
Okay. You owe me big time. I don't mean in a physical woman guy way. I mean, bring us a box of donuts. We'll call it even.
Thanks. You're a sweetheart.
Dougie.
Yeah, Bill.
I like this world a lot better when we could just pinch him on the butt.
Yeah, I hear you.
I remember that show. I remember you talking about that. I didn't know what it was.
So again, it's a little dated. It is from the 90s. And they are exaggerating stuff to a certain extent, but it kind of does maybe represent some of the challenges that women might face if they go into a predominantly male field. Of course, Ms. Honeycutt there is sort of their token feminist, I guess, and Grace is playing the role of the more just sort of everyday, honey, please shut up, making it be better role. But it does kind of illustrate some of the challenges. As we were talking about the pay gap, it does still exist. Somewhere around 77 cents women earn for every dollar that men make in similar occupations. And there have been a lot of attempts to maybe explain why this happens. One is the idea of years of experience, because women are more likely than men to have dropped out of the workforce for a time to take care of children, to have children like. Another is that women tend to be concentrated in lower paying occupations. For example, those that involve helping people tend to pay less than other jobs requiring the same amount of education. And some employers do discriminate against women when hiring in higher paying jobs. Some employers do pay women less than men in the same job, even though this has been strictly illegal since the Equal Pay Act of 1963, unless the difference is based on some other factor than sex itself. So I can't say I'm paying you less because you're a woman. but I can say I'm paying you less because you're not as productive as your male coworker. So as long as it's not strictly because of your gender. We also see that employers often set lower pay rates in jobs filled mostly by women than in different jobs requiring the same amount of education but mostly filled by men. So simply because a certain job or job description has more women working in it than men, that entire profession gets paid less than professions that require a similar amount of education that are worked by men. There's no real 100% answer for this, but it could be caused by the biased perception that whatever is done by women must be easier and thus not as important for the company. This happens sort of in the widespread workforce as well as just inside a company. That's the example your book uses. If you're looking at like one organization, one company, say secretaries that require a bachelor's degree will get paid less than other jobs in that company that require a bachelor's degree because the perception is most secretaries are women and that can't be a hard job so they get paid less. But the trends that we've seen is that even in fields that used to be predominantly men, as women have entered the workforce and women start to take those jobs and those jobs slowly become known as women's jobs, that entire profession as a result has ended up taking a pay decrease. They end up being paid less as more women move into a field than when they're dominated by men. And some studies have been conducted that show a motherhood penalty. Once again, they're doing it by sending out fake resumes. But they've noticed that in resumes that sort of subtly indicate the applicant may be a mother, such as she's involved with the PTA or whatever the case might be, receive significantly fewer callbacks than identical resumes that omit any references to being a mother. Interestingly, there was no comparable fatherhood penalty in resumes of men that indicated they were fathers. We only see this when women indicate that they are mothers on their resumes. Okay?
At Office Max, when I used to work there in Mississippi, when they hire you and you say you're a parent, they let you know that if you leave more than 2 hours before your shift is over, or you don't call at least 2 hours prior to your shift beginning, you can receive a write-up and or be fired depending on how many times you've done that based on how many times you had to leave for your quote-unquote children.
I'm sure many jobs have similar policies. Yeah.
I just thought that was interesting, and then like some places don't care.
I mean, in theory, if we again want to be stereotypical, it probably does impact mothers more than it does fathers. But again, that's a generalization because we can't always say that it's always going to be the mom that takes off work to go take care of the kids.
Yeah.
On terms of averages, it probably is the mom more than the dad, but that's a sweeping generalization.
This kind of reminds me of when my older brother was in elementary school. There was an assignment to draw and talk about your parents, and what he came up with was my dad wears a hat and my mother goes to work. It's just kind of interesting. That reminded me of that.
My dad wears a hat, and my mother goes to work.
Yeah. It might have been opposite. My mother goes to work and my dad wears a hat.
Okay.
But, yeah. He does wear hats.
I guess I was noticed. Alright, so those are some of the ideas out there. Not exhaustive, but those are some of the rationalizations. However, we don't just talk about how all this stuff has impacted women. There has been an impact on men as well. And changing social narratives. Again, for men, the narrative has always been, get an education, get a job, take care of your family, yada, yada, yada. But since the 70s, married men have begun spending more time with their children and doing more housework. However, these changes have been asymmetric. Men have moved less into what has been traditionally considered women's areas than vice versa. So it's much more common for women to enter a so-called men's arena than it is for a man to do the opposite. And not just in terms of housework and spending time with the kids, but there are still a whole host of jobs that are also considered to be women's work. And men going into these fields also face some social stigma when they take on these professions. Changes in the economy. While men's attitudes, like women's, have become more accepting of female employment, men didn't really move in large numbers into being full-time homemakers, and the norms of masculinity seem relatively unchanged in insisting that married men are supposed to have a job. So stay-at-home dads kind of get the shaft a little bit. I mean, we kind of still, to a certain extent, revere the stay-at-home mom, because what more important job is there than, staying home and raising your kids? But men are kind of looked at a little strange when they do that instead of the traditional going out and having a job. It also mentions the impracticality due to differences in pay. The idea that men on average make more money than women, so it's much, much harder on a family if it's the man that stays home instead of the woman. And the reality of dual earner households. The idea that how easy is it for most families today to survive on the salary of one parent. And it's not. So a lot of people end up having to have dual earner households. Anyway, we also talk about the social expectations. The idea that more women have moved into traditional male areas than men have moved into traditional female areas. We have the pay gap. The idea that women still make less than men. And the social stigma of doing anything that makes a male seem feminine is much, much harsher in general than it is for women doing masculine things. We also see changes in children and youth, and the idea that the social scene in today's high schools and colleges often features friendship groups containing both sexes, and boys must get used to girls competing with them. There are also some other real-world tangible things that this book doesn't mention, and I'm going to go ahead and throw it at you. In general, and the guys are still outnumbered in here, so maybe it'll cause an argument, maybe it won't. Who are better drivers, men or women? I hear some chuckling, and then, yeah.
I don't think
It really doesn't. I mean, I don't know if there are a heck of a lot of studies on this beyond some of the funny stuff I've seen on TV, but I don't think there's a large statistical difference. Who's going to pay more for car insurance between the ages of 18 and 25? Men. It is much, much higher for men under the age of 25 than it is for women, because the perception is that once all men under the age of 25 get behind a car, they're doing nothing but drag racing their friends, apparently. Right, that's it, maybe. That is true. And you could be like me, who I don't even have a speeding ticket on my record, but I still paid higher car insurance rates until I turned 25 simply because I'm a guy. I drove a Nissan Sentra. It's a little 4-cylinder automatic, when I was that age. I mean, you could move through traffic, but I'm not exactly hauling ass down the road in a Sentra. So.
Well, because the whole insurance thing, I got in a really bad car wreck a couple months ago, and my insurance went up $30. My brother got a really bad ticket. His went up $100 and something.
Mm-hmm.
It's so weird. I totaled the car, and it barely went up.
There you go. That's one.
It also depends on stipulation.
Area.
Do men need to take off their beards and burn them? Not that thing?
I don't know. Maybe.
And that was shown in the police report.
Maybe no, because I can't even really say that. There you go. Because I was trying to see boxer briefs or Y fronts, but yeah, no, not necessarily. But maybe jock straps might be a good reference. So yeah, insurance is one area. There's also another one that you probably don't think about too much. But upon turning 18, what is required of every man in this country to do, but not required of the women? Yeah, sign up for the selective service. Even though our fighting forces are becoming more integrated than they ever have before, with both men and women fighting, only men have to sign up for the selective service. And it could be argued, well, why does that matter? Because it's not like we've had a draft in forever and a day. Guys, if you don't sign up for the selective service, what could possibly potentially happen to you? You can actually. I mean, on the extreme, if you forget to sign up for the selective service upon turning 18, they can actually put you in jail for a couple of years and fine you up to $100,000. Those are very rarely actually prosecuted, though. The real world impact is that if you don't sign up for the selective service and you are a guy, you lose any chance you ever had at any federal aid whatsoever. No financial aid for college, no welfare, nothing if you did not sign up when you were 18.
I don't know if I signed up.
You were, well, if you've got student loans now, then you safely can say you did, or that they would not have given them to you.
I did that when I was stressed. Then you have to sign your first driver's license.
That's what you can't get a driver's license either if you don't sign up for the draft. That's the other thing you're barred from. They will not give you a driver's
So
license.
you're technically not a citizen then. You don't get any help from the government if you don't sign
Kinda.
up.
It said if you sign up late, or this is if you, I mean, this is if you don't sign up on time or if you don't sign up at all.
There's a certain window, I'm pretty sure.
When you don't sign up in that window, you're going from all of that regardless of signing up.
Because the specific article I read about this the other day was chronicling, I think he's 26, and he had a very, very rough life when he was younger, went through foster homes and ended up in jail. And he was in jail when he turned 18. And, of course, with his background, he didn't know anything about the selective service or the draft or having the sign up or whatever. And now that he's 26, trying to get his life back together and go to college, he can't get any student loans because he didn't register.
That's kind of crappy.
And that's kind of the point that a lot of people are making. If the draft is so useless now, if we haven't had a compulsory military service in years, then why do we still force only men to sign up for it and have penalties like that if you don't think about it? Because honestly, how many of us really think about that on a daily basis, especially if we're getting ready to turn 18? You know, is it really in the conscious mind of a lot of people, oh, I better go sign up for the draft?
I do this.
I can buy cigarettes.
Yeah, you know, we might think about that, but we don't really think about, you know, signing up for the draft. But there are some pretty serious penalties if you don't do it. All right, so I'm going to take us back to this last line here, where it says boys have had to get used to girls competing with them more openly in school. So, of course, I'm sure the reaction to that is, well, but I specifically want to talk about Title IX. Anyone know what Title IX is?
I remember talking about it a lot in high school with my economics teacher. I don't remember what it was.
Okay. Title IX is the idea, the way it's typically been used is to sort of even the playing field and get more girls into sports. Like if there is a male team for something, girls have to have equal opportunities. So if you have a guys basketball team, you'll probably have a girls basketball team, and their facilities, their locker rooms and stuff should be equivalent. That's the way it tends to get talked about. But it's actually about equality in all educational aspects. I specifically want to show you a clip from ESPNW that talks about Title IX and shows you two different opinions on Title IX and what Title IX means and the impact that Title IX has had in this very specific case.
Welcome to The Word. I'm from Riverhead. Joining me are Jamel Hill in studio, as well as Sarah Spain, who joins us via satellite from Chicago. Many of you have heard of girls playing on boys' teams, but today's topic has to do with the opposite. Boys playing on a girls' team. Healing Flora began playing for Southampton High School's girls' field hockey team at the age of 11. This is in New York. Recently, Suffolk County's governing body for sports decided that Pilaro's skills and talents have had an adverse effect on the opportunities for girls to participate successfully in the sport, essentially saying Pilaro, who's now 13, is too good. Now, this is not the first time something like this has happened. In 2005, OTL ran a story about a field hockey team out of Pennsylvania that had 5 boys on their team. Now, Michelle Fisher, who's coached field hockey for over a dozen years at another high school, doesn't agree with this idea.
I see it as a girls' sport. They work very hard at their skills. They work very hard at training, and I don't think it's right that a boy could just come in and take it. So Jamel, should boys such as Pilar be allowed to play on a girls' team?
No, because this is about creating opportunities for what traditionally women have been very underrepresented represented when it comes to sports. So why would you create an avenue for boys to play girls sports when so long, one of the reasons, or what Title IX, the foundation of it, is creating those equal opportunities because there was a lack of representation. I do feel sorry for this kid because the school district should have never allowed him to play to begin with, but unfortunately, you have to give some homage to historical precedent. And the historical precedent says that women and girls deserve these opportunities. These opportunities are not meant for boys.
And when you talk about these opportunities, Sarah, you talk about field hockey internationally and also in Europe. This is a very predominantly male sport. So when you come to New York, there's no male field hockey team. So do you think that he should be able to play, Sarah?
Absolutely. Look, if you want those opportunities for women and girls, it's coming from Title IX. The basis of Title IX isn't we want to just help women. It's about we want to even the playing field on all education, but in this instance, we're talking about sports. And if you're going to argue that a girl should be able to play on the football team because there are no football teams for women and that's what she wants to play, you have to be able to allow the same with men and boys. And in this particular example, the argument that they gave for now telling this boy that he can't play is that he got too good at it. Look, we're all going to get better if we're playing with people that are better. He's going to bring the game up of the girls around him. There's no cuts on the league the team he plays on, so no girls lost a position because of him. The awards they give out at the end of the season are not limited to one player, so they could easily give him an award if he's the best, and also whatever other girls.
But Sarah, you just said that he didn't take over a position, but he was the team's leading scorer over the past 2 seasons. So you don't think that he took somebody's position?
No, he took someone's place, perhaps in the starting lineup, but no one got cut from the team because if the way you're going to get cut is because of a boy or a girl or anybody, then sorry, you weren't good enough. This is a meritocracy. You win a spot on the team by playing well, and if this boy happens to be playing better, then that's the way it goes.
Well, keep in mind that this kid, now at 13 years old, only stands at 4'8" and is 82 pounds. So it's not like this kid is an absolute monster. It's not like he's 5'8" and about the same size. So really, in all sense, he's undersized compared to all these other girls. So one might be able to argue that he really doesn't have that much of an advantage.
No, I don't think it's about the physical advantage. I think it's just generally about the opportunity.
So there's a question, Sarah, do you think they should just completely ban it so girls cannot ever play on boys teams and vice versa, just completely ban it?
Absolutely not. I think until we have a best case scenario where we feel like Title IX has achieved its goal of having an equal amount of men and women playing, equal opportunities for men and women, I think you need to be able to bend the rules or go outside of your natural, tendencies as far as what you think is right or makes sense. And in this case, it's one kid.
The fact is he's kind of caught up in the crossfire, and it's beyond him at this age. There's nothing he could really do about it. But I think it still sets a dangerous precedent because you don't want boys taking those opportunities away from girls.
And this is a very unique situation because he began playing on the varsity team at the age of 11, and now he's only 13 years old. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of The Word. A big thanks to Sarah Spain for joining us from Chicago. Now, you folks at home can keep the discussion going on Twitter. Just search #ESPNW The Word and give us your opinion because your word counts. For Jamel Hill, I'm Prince Rippapat. See you guys next time.
So what do you think?
The way the argument they're having about him not being on the team is completely unfair. If the point of Title IX is to make it even, then if that's a predominantly girl sport here, he should have the same opportunity to play on a girl's sport as a girl does to play on a boy's sport. That's just how it should be. I mean, I get that, as he gets older and he grows, he's going to get bigger and then it might become a concern, but they don't want him on the girls' team. Why don't they make a boys' team for it then?
Because maybe he's the only boy that wants to play. The background story here is his parents are from New York, but when he was very young, Dad took a job in Europe somewhere, and so he's been in Europe for the first 10 years of his life, where field hockey is a predominantly male sport. He's played field hockey his entire life. He wants to be a professional field hockey player when he grows up. They moved back to New York at 11, and here, field hockey is a girl sport. There are no male field hockey teams, and there aren't many guys that play field hockey. And so he wants to play. So at 11, he gets a spot on the varsity team. And as you saw, the girls he's playing with are 16, 17 years old. And he's currently 13, 4'8", and 82 pounds.
I think if they had been on the team and sucked, they wouldn't care, but the fact that he's good. That's why it's on set.
Yeah,
Cause
that's not fair.
it's not fair because he's a boy and you took a girl's spot. He's 13.
Yeah. If he's good enough to be on the varsity team, what's the problem? He's gonna help the team win. Why is it such a big deal that he's a boy, not a girl? If that was a 13-year-old girl, you know they wouldn't say nothing about it.